All right, everyone. Good morning. It's the middle morning briefing of the week, and it's a Celtic match day, John. It might not quite be Bayern Munich this evening, but I just love Celtic games. I just love a midweek game and building ahead to anything, pretty much.
Yeah, it's always good when Celtic are playing, and I think on the pitch Celtic are moving forward positively at the moment, and I'm kind of excited to see the team perform after the performance at Motherwell, because see what kind of team Rodgers fields. Whether it's kind of rotation or whether tonight will be the team that plays Bayern, and the rotation comes at the weekend. So
Yeah.
there's all sorts of stuff in play with regards to that. So it'll be good to see another Celtic performance.
Jota's homecoming tonight, everyone. How are we
Yes.
feeling about that? Do you think Jota will start the game, everyone? Let us know. Is there any chance of him starting? It did cross my mind earlier.
I
Oh,
think I think Jota was electric, obviously off the bench at the weekend, but I think Rodgers will play it safe with his fitness and kind of building him back up to like the full Jota experience, and I think we'll probably see him on the bench again tonight. That would be my thoughts, and then he'll get an ovation coming off the bench, and it'll all be a big
yeah.
moment, and that will be nice for him.
And probably start on Saturday
Mm-hmm.
against Wraith Rovers and then clearly start against Bayern Munich a few days later. So it's a big old week for Jota. Jeffrey Schlupp as well. Have you worked out, is it Schlupp or Schlupp? I feel like it's Schlupp.
I said Schlupp when it was first announced, which felt a bit odd. I think Schlupp sounds more. It sounds classier anyway, so maybe we'll go with that.
We could see him for the first time. I think we'll see him actually from what Brendan Rodgers was saying yesterday that he's ready to go. I think he's been in matchday squads for Crystal Palace up until the weekend there at Old Trafford. So he should be good to go. Martin reckons Jota will start.
Mm,
Wombat saying bench for me. It just adds a bit of intrigue. Like I'm kind of pumped for tonight's game. Like I know it's only
okay.
Dundee, but it's a chance to, as Brendan Rodgers said yesterday, go 13 points clear, 13 games to go. It's a step towards four in a row, and a couple of new signings potentially seeing them at Celtic Park for the first
I don't
time.
mind that energy, Hamish. I enjoy your positive energy. There's been plenty of other energy going around in the last 48 hours, so it's nice to have a bit of happiness this morning.
Okay, morning everyone. I've not even said morning to you, so lovely to have all the usual faces and names with us. Not faces, just names. Let us know how you're feeling ahead of tonight's game. As I say, it's a midweek game or game in hand. It was called off 10 days ago for that storm that wreaked havoc in Scotland. Brendan Rodgers
Yeah,
yesterday.
yeah.
What did you make of that?
Uh, it was interesting. It was kind of like I actually thought the way Rogers handled that is probably how the support or a lot of supporters feel about the transfer window in general, in the sense that he obviously had frustration and he made it clear that he wasn't particularly happy with how it transpired. But he did it in a pretty calm and measured way, and a kind of pragmatic way as well, that doesn't derail Celtic on the kind of positive trajectory they're on, but is also making it clear that in isolation that window wasn't exactly what Celtic needed. A couple of lines jumped out at me when he said the squad is definitely lighter, and then he said
Yeah,
he's not pointing fingers at anyone. I mean, it was pretty obvious to me, and he had also had a line about how there's a myth going around that you can't find good players in January, which I thought was
yeah, yeah.
very interesting because that's something a lot of people do say. So there was a few interesting comments from Rogers, but it was pretty measured in general. And it just, I think the reaction to the window, there's always a reaction to the reaction, right? So there's always like that initial reaction to not signing a striker. It's a disappointment. A lot of people have their say in that. Then there's like the second wave of fan opinion who react to people reacting to that. Why are you being so negative? Celtic are on, they're on course for a treble, etc., etc. And I think Rogers kind of cut a good middle line between all of that and kind of summed up the entire situation as a whole, which is what you want from someone who's leading the football club. You want a measured, calm, pragmatic approach to it, while also addressing the realities of what happened. Celtic didn't replace Kyogo, which was a disappointment. But I thought Rogers got the tone spot on actually. For me anyway. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, you picked out a couple of things he said there. The one that got me was the answer I think that most people have picked up on when he's speaking about learning from the experience and the emotional transfer, which is not a phrase I've ever heard in my life before, but it clearly has some sort of meaning. And he's basically saying that if he said if you have the hump, then it's going to affect his ability to inspire and motivate because he's not going to be in a good mood, which is a very basic thing to say. And some people would maybe look at that and think, is that a little bit of a cop out in terms of not wanting to be critical? But it also does make a lot of sense because he's still the Celtic manager, and it's not the playing squad we've got's fault that we've not signed another striker and potentially left ourselves a bit short. So I thought it was generally quite a positive press conference, and the clear thing we take away from it is I think it's time to move on, and it's kind of like, remember when Ange Postecoglou came into the club and there was a kind of a negative reaction, it's fair to say, when he first came in, because we'd all heard about Eddie Howe and then we suddenly went to a guy we'd not heard of. And we basically had two options, and one of them was to kick up a massive fuss and go on about it and say, oh, this guy's crap, or it was just to get behind the team and will them forward. And the Celtic support obviously did that because we all want the best for Celtic. We all want to see Celtic win. And it's obviously far better for everyone involved if you get behind them. So we got behind Ange, and look how it turned out. And obviously it's not quite to the same extent, but that's kind of what we've got here, and what Brendan Rodgers I think was getting at. Like there's no point now. We can't change the transfer window. I'm still not particularly happy about it, but this is the squad we've got now to the end of the season. And a lot of people have made this point. If you want to find ways, to feel positive, I still think you can. I mean, in my opinion, they're a little bit forced, but you can look at Johnny Kenny potentially as a guy who could, with a bit more game time, come good, and Adam Ida, a bit of responsibility could improve him. And listen, people want to make the point Daisen Maeda plays up front for Japan, and listen, Daisen Maeda could play right back and he'd be brilliant for Celtic. So, and we've signed Jota now in the left, and even Schlupp can play further up in the left. So you can make loads of kind of arguments to feel good, and that's kind of where I'm at the moment. I've had a wee bit of frustration. Still don't particularly think it's acceptable, but let's just get behind the team and make this a memorable season.
And I mean, some will look at that and think, Rodgers should be bringing in fire and brimstone and laying it all out on the line. But I don't think that helps Celtic, and I think Rodgers is aware of that. I think if he'd come out firing and this isn't good enough and Celtic aren't making the strides that they should be, they're not making the progress on recruitment that we should be, then that would feed into something that would be detrimental to the club and the team and the direction of the team. It might be satisfying for some supporters who were particularly frustrated, but I just think the way Rodgers handled that, I know diplomacy isn't for everyone, and that can be frustrating for some people. Some people like people to wear their heart on their sleeves, but I think in that moment, as the manager of Celtic, and the way things have transpired and the situation the club find themselves in terms of being potentially 13 points clear at the top of the table tonight, etc., etc., I do think Rodgers just did get it right for me yesterday, and you could still sense that he wasn't happy. It wasn't like he was trying to hide that. So he was kind of honest in that side of things, but wasn't going too overboard. And I think that's probably the way to approach the window as a whole. It's probably the way I see it, to be honest with you, because I do think letting Kyogo go without having a replacement was a mistake. And to be fair, Rodgers kind of said, some people will say that about what happened, but he also indicated that there might have been stuff going on with Kyogo in terms of his happiness behind the scenes, and that it would have probably been detrimental to keep him on or to try hold on to him in this window, given what had happened last summer. It sounds like to me, reading between the lines, that Kyogo wanted to leave Celtic last summer possibly, and Celtic maybe said to him, no, wait until January and we'll let you go in January.
Yeah. Okay, I'm making no comment on that because I'm a bit sceptical of Kyogo. Didn't strike me as that type. But anyway, John Clement saying was not happy we didn't get a striker. Things are not as bad as people say. Maybe better to wait and get the best player in the summer than an inferior player just now. Listen, potentially. Derek talking up Kenny. He scored in Ireland and Europe. Let's see what Brendan can do with him. Rodgers was very complimentary of Johnny Kenny yesterday. He called him a got it here. Natural finisher. Said he's come on a lot, and I think that's based on reports from the likes of John Kennedy and other people that he's come on a lot since his initial loan at Shamrock Rovers 18 months ago. And I think it kind of killed off any talk of Kenny leaving the club as well. The Irish window's open until February the 22nd, but he's not going to be going anywhere.
Yeah. And he kind of did a farewell post to Shamrock Rovers yesterday on social media after Brendan Rodgers' press conference. You know, I think there was something in the works in terms of Shamrock Rovers maybe had a feeling they could get him back, but I think that obviously that was dependent on Celtic bringing in a striker on deadline day. So we're going to see more of Johnny Kenny. It sounds like for better or worse, we're going to find out, I think, whether he can do something with Celtic. And I think as early as tonight, he'll get minutes off the bench. So we could see Johnny Kenny for half an hour tonight at home at Celtic Park against Dundee, an opportunity for him to show what he can do. If he can get a goal or two, certainly people start to feel a bit better about Johnny Kenny. So let's see what he can do. I don't think anyone is really in a position to know what he can do for Celtic until he gets the minutes, and I even include Brendan Rodgers in that. He can be looking whatever in training or has improved physically in training, but we won't know what he can do for Celtic until he actually plays for Celtic.
And sometimes these young players, we talk about them needing opportunities, but sometimes it comes out of necessity that you see some of them coming in, and there's plenty of like Anthony Ralston came in through necessity originally, didn't he? And he's obviously become a useful player for us, and there's different ones. So I think he might start on Saturday as well against Wraith potentially. Obviously with Bayern coming up, so it's going to be interesting to see. Brendan Rodgers has talked him up yesterday, so let's get a good look, because it's only really the Ross County game we've seen, and that was on a terrible pitch, and I thought he did decent enough up there. Let's see more of that. He also talked up Dyson Maeda, who he says has better pressing and more, that's a tough word, penetrative running even than Kyogo, which I thought was interesting, but quite possibly.
Like, Rodgers' job is to manage the players who is here, so he's not going to be given any platitudes to Kyogo that he doesn't need to, and obviously he's going to be talking what Dyson Maeda can bring to the Celtic game through the middle, because I think Maeda will be used there again. Like we're saying, Maeda's going to get minutes through the middle between now and the end of the season. That seems inevitable, especially as Jota gets up to full match fitness. We will see more rotation between Ida and Maeda, which is again we'll see. And Maeda does have, he's not. What my issue probably with Maeda before through the middle was that I had question marks about his finishing, but I do feel like he's brought that on this season as well. So if he can take the chances that are given to him, whether he's playing through the middle or on the left, that's fine. I think Rodgers made an interesting point yesterday as well, that he knows Maeda can do that job through the middle, but he's not wanting to take those goals away from the wide areas. 16 goals apiece on the left and right. Rodgers
but Jota can score those goals now, can't he?
Yeah. Jota can score. So, I mean, it's not ideal. And again, none of this is ideal. But Rodgers has got to work with what he has. So, what he's got Maeda, he's got Kenny. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out for me.
And I keep saying it, but I think James Forrest coming back will make a difference as well. It seems like Forrest has been out for ages, but that will just give us another option to be able to rotate things. We are going to be kind of juggling, I think, and filling gaps in those front three positions. But if we get a bit of luck with injuries, I think it is possible. And listen, we might end up looking at Maeda playing through the middle and questioning why that hasn't always been the case. I wouldn't be totally surprised if Maeda just turns out to be a total revelation through the middle, but I definitely think we'll get to see it going forward. Jeffrey Schlupp, we had his an interview from him yesterday. Some interesting stuff in there. Speaking about Kasper Schmeichel, apparently they're still in a Leicester City group chat from when they won the league in 2016.
Yeah, well, that was a once in a lifetime achievement for Leicester. So I mean, I could see why they would all be bonded in such a big way. Yeah, he seems a nice guy, doesn't he? He seems
he does
like he'll fit in well with the group. He seems like the same sort of character as we know. He's won trophies in the past. He knows what it takes, and I think the squad will be positive about his arrival, because I think he's probably an upgrade on Alex Valle. Let's be honest about it. He's got so much experience at a top level. He can play in a variety of different positions. He adds versatility. A bit of experience, bit of leadership in the group. So as we kind of said the other day, in isolation, his signing isn't bad at all. Adamida was positive about it as well. He kind of played against them in England and said, when he went up against them, he was a really tough opponent, a really tough character to play against. So that bodes well as well. And yeah, so the initial impressions on Schlupp are pretty positive.
My big prediction is that Schlupp will be here longer than his loan, and I know that's very premature given he's literally not kicked the ball for us. I just get the impression that he might surprise people a little bit. I don't think people have huge or high expectations really for him because he's seen as a bit of a stopgap. We know that Kieran Tierney's coming in. I think he might turn out to be a pretty wily, experienced player, and I do think it's similarities with Aaron Moy in terms of the way that the signing, and people are maybe questioning it slightly in terms of how much can he offer for a number of years, and I could be totally wrong, but I think Jeffrey Schlupp might play a more prominent role than people think. I think people might really take to him. It certainly seems like Crystal Palace fans really took to him, despite him not playing much for them in recent years. A lot of them still have good things to say about him, and I think it's the same at Leicester.
Yeah, and an important note there is obviously his loan's only for 6 months, but his contract actually expires at Crystal Palace at the end of the season, so he's without a club due in the summer, so he could be picked up on a free transfer if he does well in this 6 months.
Yeah. So again, people asking, will we see Schlupp tonight? The chat from Brendan Rodgers was that he's ready to go. So
yeah,
he's not.
I think that'll be another one off the bench.
Yeah.
Would you say? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll get to see him. Team news wise for tonight, Brendan Rodgers was quite funny in his answer. He said all the players that are fit are available for tonight, so not giving much away. I assume that means James Forrest is out. Is there anyone else we know of that's missing?
No, I think I took that as just James Forrest because he gets asked the same question every time, and the same reply is everyone's fit apart from James Forrest. So yeah.
So team for tonight, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so team for tonight, Schmeichel, I would go. I think Johnston will come back into the team. I actually think tonight will be a pretty strong team because I think it will probably be most of the team that starts against Bayern, and I think the rotation will come at the weekend. So I think it could be Johnston, Carter Vickers, Trusty, Taylor across the back line, McGregor. I think probably Engels will come back into the team with Hatate. With Hatate.
Got McCowan in mind.
Yeah. And then I would have Maeda, obviously, Kuhn, Anida up front. I think it's going to be a full strength team tonight to go 13 points clear.
Okay, I've got McCowan in my team, just because it's against his old side, and I think he was pretty good at Dens Park, and obviously scored that goal. So yeah, Dundee 10th in the table, which seems a bit low for them because whenever I've seen them, they've been quite impressive, but that has been at Dens Park. So yeah, as I keep saying, I'm looking forward to tonight. I think it's going to be a wee kind of a nice buzz in the air at Celtic Park, and hopefully we score some goals and really get some momentum going ahead of Bayern because we're only a week away from Bayern.
Interesting. Rodgers was asked about Dundee, and he was asked about the 3-3 game and how have they trained differently in the build up to this. And Rodgers was quite forceful with the point that he thought the defending was weak in that 3-3 game, and it obviously was. But he said the comment, I guarantee we won't be as soft as that tomorrow night. So it was like he was using that 3-3 game as a point to the players, like show that you're better than this. Don't make any big errors. Don't be soft in your play. Be aggressive. Be on the front foot. And I think that's probably what we'll see from the team tonight because that 3-3 game was a strange one. And I think Celtic will be out to show that they're much better than that. And I think it sounded from Rodgers' press conference is that he'll be using that little bit of motivation to get the team up for this and give Dundee a really tough night, which obviously Celtic are capable of doing.
And Austin Trusty in particular, I guess, will be on the receiving end of that message because we all know what Brendan Rodgers thought when that goal was given away. Jay's asking about Paulo Bernardo. Why is Bernardo getting less minutes? He maybe is. Bernardo maybe gone slightly off the boil in probably the last 5 or 6 weeks for me. Certainly not playing quite as well as he was near the start of the season, where he was one of our better players. Now, part of that might be that he's not starting games and it's probably difficult to come in, but he isn't playing quite as well for me as he was.
He's not standing out, is he? He's not, because he had a couple of performances where he was like a standout performer or helped to drag Celtic through a game. But I think recently it's kind of like he's been playing within the team, almost within himself, almost. I think Bernardo's got talent, but we need him to show that bravado, that personality, and really come onto a game. And in the way that I think Engels has made progress with over the last 6 weeks, I think the same could have been said for Engels maybe in that first stage of the season when he just arrived. He was kind of playing within the team, within the system, without really standing out. Now Engels, I think, is coming onto a game more and starting to show more as an individual and starting to impact the game as an individual. And I think that's probably been the difference between Engels and Bernardo over the last 6 or so weeks, and is probably why Bernardo's not been playing as much. Engels is definitely coming onto a game more than Bernardo at the moment.
Is it kind of unfortunate for Bernardo that he's clearly such a talented player, but like when the big games come around, I feel like Brendan Rodgers always wants McGregor, Hatate, and Engels as his midfield, and clearly Bernardo has started some big games. I think Dortmund was an obvious one. I think he started ahead of Hatate that night because he'd been so good leading up, and it was almost impossible not to start him in that game. But it's a tricky one with Bernardo because he's still young. People forget how young he is. He's probably only a couple of years older than Engels, if that. And I think there's a hell of a lot of potential there, but it just seems like when the big games come around, there's something about Bernardo that just doesn't quite make the cut as opposed to Engels or Hatate.
Yeah, and I think whenever Rodgers has talked about Bernardo, he's always talked about him in a squad sense, hasn't he? He's kind of talked about him as a player who can help the squad over the course of the season. And in no way what we spent a fair amount of money on him, but I've always seen Bernardo as someone who's that kind of rotation player rather than an automatic starter. And maybe that's an unfair perception on my part, but that's also the vibe that I've gotten off of Brendan Rodgers over Bernardo's time here.
I mean, he's captain of the Portugal under-21s. This is a really good player. I thought there was a phase. I think it was the Zagreb game. Did he start in Zagreb? And I just thought he was our standout player that night. And I think Pittodrie as well. He just hasn't quite hit that form recently. So, listen, I'd love to see him start tonight and do that. But I certainly think if he doesn't start tonight, he'll start against Wraith Rovers. Edward wondering what will happen after 75 minutes. Ida's blown out his back end. It'll be interesting to see what the manager does. I think it'll be Kenny, won't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rodgers was pretty clear with that yesterday. As we're saying, for better or worse. And I'm not saying that's ideal, but I think Rodgers has made quite clear that he's given Johnny Kenny that step up from the fringes of the team to being more involved with the squad. That was the message I got from yesterday's press conference anyway, and I think that's probably what we'll see going forward.
Officials tonight, referees Colin Stephen, Jonathan Bell and Alistair Mather are the assistants. VAR is Alan Muir. What's this other stuff that's going on today then, John, about UEFA and all this nonsense?
Yeah, so as we're aware, Celtic were given a kind of suspended notice on away fans or the potential of an away fan ban earlier in the season, and then against Aston Villa a smoke bomb was thrown onto the pitch. I believe the hearing for that is today, so I think the club are going to find out today and the sport are going to find out today whether fans will be allowed into the Allianz Arena against Bayern Munich in the second leg. So I think that's all due to come out today, so that's something to keep an eye on, and we reached out to you for a kind of time on when that might be, but we've not had anything back yet. But obviously we'll be all over that and kind of come out. It'd be obviously a massive shame for the support to be banned from the Allianz Arena, and I think Alistair Johnston spoke quite well about that last week and how important the away fans were, even at Villa Park when Celtic go behind in that game, how important the away fans were to bring Celtic back into that match and how much that energised them. It's important for Celtic to have a pocket of supporters in these arenas away in Europe. I think it is grounding for the players, and I think it does help the players. So hopefully we'll find out from you. I mean, we don't really know. UEFA are a mystery sometimes. It can be a bit convoluted how they make their decisions sometimes, but hopefully we hear today that the fans aren't banned, but obviously there's every chance that they will be.
I feel like it's normally kind of mid-afternoon you hear about these things, but I could be off with that. It's obviously very hard for us to say what's going to happen with this. We don't really know. Fair to say that the sense maybe is that the news might not be good.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I don't want to prejudge that too much. We'll just wait on what UEFA say. But I think everyone's obviously. I think the club are obviously hoping as well that fans will be allowed because. And I think that the club said that they would fight the fans' corners on it, in the sense of putting forward an argument of why they shouldn't be banned because it was just such an isolated incident. It wasn't like a group of fans with a lot of pyro. It was just like one fan with one bit of pyro, and that fan is probably not going to get back into a Celtic game anytime soon. But it would be a shame for the wider support to be banned for it.
Yeah, it really would. Hopefully that's good news there. But we should hear later today again. The website will be the place to check for all of that kind of stuff. Ian saying I'd start Bernardo over Hatate. Lately it seems like Hatate is trying hard. Derek's going for 5-0 tonight. Ida, Kenny, Maida, McCowan and Jota to score. I could see Celtic netting a few goals tonight. I've got a wee feeling. What was it? 7-1 against Dundee. Midweek game this time last year, roughly. It was February, wasn't it? I think a little bit later in February, but potentially see something similar tonight.
Hopefully. I mean, I could see a few goals. If thinking about it, I think Celtic could hit a few goals without reply tonight. Yeah, I think that could be how it pans out. I would go for a 3-0, something like that. I think that's a fair enough prediction on tonight. I know Dundee came back at us at Dens Park, but it's always different at Celtic Park. And I think just the added factor that there was that draw recently, I think the players will be pretty motivated for this one tonight. And I think that thing about going 13 points clear with not that many games to go is pretty strong for the players. It's just such a strong position to be in, and kind of using this moment to reaffirm or reaffirm their status as so dominant in the league would be a good thing tonight. So hopefully that's what we see.
Pete, what are these last two games against Dundee? I can only think of the one game, which was the 3-3 game. What was it? The other one? Is he going back to last season, or did we have one earlier this season? 2-0
against them, I think, early in the season. I think Alistair Johnston scored. That. Arne Engels from the penalty spot. I think his point is that they've been quite, they can be quite difficult at times. So they're a bit of an awkward opponent, Dundee, but they're also changeable. They've had a few bad results, outside of Celtic this season. They can have bad nights, and hopefully Celtic can capitalise on that later.
Now, was that another midweek game, the 2-0 game? I think I'm kind of remembering it now. We scored 2 in quick succession, I think, in the second half.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we're going to score more than that tonight. So let's hope. So, final thing I just wanted to mention, it may or may not be of interest to people, but there was a player we were linked with in January, a young Irish player at St. Pat's, Mason, and I think it's pronounced Melia, is his surname, young Irish player. He's moved to Spurs. Okay. He's not going to move until next January, but it's apparently a record transfer fee for the League of Ireland. So he's clearly a player we were interested in, but Ange is beating us to it, so that's not a player we're going to sign. So the hunt for a striker goes on, John. Is there anything else in your mind today before we head off?
No, nothing too much. I think Tony and Ryan will be the people on tonight for covering the match, so we'll have stuff on the YouTube channel, obviously all over the website as well. We've got a few things coming up. We've got a kind of scouting report analysis of Jeffrey Schlupp from Stuart Ross. We've got a review of the Champions League group stage as well ahead of Bayern, just how Celtic kind of put the kind of the data and the numbers behind Celtic's performance and relative to other group stage teams from Alan Morrison coming up on the site as well. So we've got a few things in the pipeline as we come out of the transfer window and prepare for this big end of the season.
And Ryan and Tony, as you say, on later tonight, before, after,
yes,
etc.
Yes.
Okay.
So Ryan will be there. We'll have Tony hosting the show, I think, on YouTube tonight. So that'll be good fun.
Should be fun. Everyone check that out and enjoy the game tonight. As I say, I think Celtic might do quite well tonight, and we'll get a chance to see Jota, Schlupp, potentially Kenny, who knows who else in that team back at Celtic Park, and a chance to get some momentum going ahead of Bayern Munich a week today. So looking forward to it. John, thank you for now. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Much appreciated. Remember, you can get more from us, celticway.co.uk. And I'll speak to you this time tomorrow.